I'm Andy Gilmore, and at 36, I've been hitched to Claire, my high school girlfriend, for 16 years now. April, our teenage daughter, is 14 years old. I'm a pretty solid guy, 6 feet tall and around 200 pounds. Most of that's muscle, though, comes with the territory when you've been an electrician for nearly 2 decades. Classroom learning wasn't really my thing, but I excel at practical tasks. Once I finished high school, I started training as an electrician. 4 years down the road, I passed the test to become a journeyman. By the time I hit 24, I'd already gotten my master's license. Intelligence isn't lacking in me, but I prefer hands-on work to studying from textbooks. I wanted to start my own business, but Claire preferred the stability of my job at Alpha Electrical Contractors, since we had a young daughter and she stayed home. My job provided a comfortable life. Our house and cars were paid off. We took vacations and never stressed over bills. I thought we were happy. Tom, my best friend since third grade, became a successful businessman after earning a degree from Stanford and an MBA. He makes more money, but is single, and frequently comes over for dinner and often talks about how envious he is of my family, reminding me that while money can buy many things, it can't buy love. I always agreed. I loved Claire, and April was my world. We were close, and I even taught her a bit about electrical work, though I hoped for more for her future. In August, my world collapsed. I returned home from a job and saw Tom's car in the driveway, which wasn't unusual since he often came over for dinner. Normally, when I arrived, my daughter April would greet me at the door, but this time she wasn't there. Curious, I asked Claire where she was, and she mentioned she was at her friend Danielle's house. Both Claire and Tom had odd expressions signaling something was off. When Claire said, "We need to talk," my heart sank. I had just come from a hot outdoor job and needed a shower, so I asked for a moment to clean up. In the shower, I thought about what might be going on. Could Claire be pregnant? We hadn't talked about more kids, but it had been a few weeks since we were intimate, and the timing seemed possible. That could explain her concern, though I would have embraced the idea of another child. But why was Tom involved? Maybe she confided in him first to gauge how I might react. I began to wonder if someone was seriously ill. I had no family left. My father had died in a car crash when I was 11, and my mother passed away 10 years later. Their divorce, caused by my mother's infidelity and my father's inability to cope with it, had shaped much of my childhood. Maybe the issue was with Claire's parents or her sister Liz. I even considered it could be Claire or Tom, but I figured I would have known sooner if that were the case. With nothing else to go on, I went downstairs to face whatever this was. When I joined them in the living room, I didn't pick up on the fact that Claire and Tom were sitting together on the couch while I sat alone on the love seat. Claire started by saying how much she appreciated me, but it quickly turned into a confession. She and Tom had fallen in love, and she wanted a divorce. It felt like a cinder block had hit my chest. I was speechless, struggling to comprehend what she was saying. Claire continued, hoping we could handle things smoothly for April's sake, keeping her life as undisturbed as possible. When I finally found my voice, I asked if she had slept with him. She gave me a wry smile, and her answer was a knife in my back. Of course I have, Andy. I was still reeling, trying to process everything. We had been together for over 20 years, more than half our lives. I had always believed we were happy, with nothing in our relationship that couldn't be worked out. Now, I was left grasping for answers, wondering where it had all gone wrong. Tom's attempt to interrupt was what finally got my voice back. "Andy, look! No!" I shouted, surprising even myself. "You're never to speak to me again, you backstabbing son of a witch. Let me make this clear, Tom. If you say another word to me, I will kill you, and I'd happily spend the rest of my life in prison for it. Nod if you get that." He nodded. Tom was just a suit, not very strong, and he knew I could break him in half if I wanted to. "There's no need to act like this," Claire jumped in. "Let's try to keep things civil, please, Andy." "It is necessary for me to act this way, and I'm being as civil as I can. I'm the one who's being betrayed and stomped on, so screw you and your ideas about how I should react." I spat at her. "And I'm taking custody of my little girl, not you." "Andy, I get that you're upset, but I'm not giving up custody of April," Claire said. "We can figure out a fair visitation schedule so you can spend plenty of time with her, but she's staying with us so her life can be as normal as possible. You work long hours, and I'll still be at home." "Forget that." I was really nailing it with my words. "You don't understand a damn thing. She's my kid too. I haven't spent the last 18 years busting my arse to support my family just to become a part-time dad, because the hoe I married decided to trade up for someone with a bigger bank account. I guess that's why none of the other women ever worked out. He apparently had his eyes on you." This isn't about money, Andy, she shot back. The truth is, we never should have gotten married. I thought I loved you, but we were just kids. I married you because we'd been together so long and everyone expected it. I tried to be a good wife, but as I grew older, I realized there was more for me out there. And I found it with Tom. We didn't mean for this to happen. He was just always around and we clicked. Honestly, we're surprised you never noticed how well we got along. That's when I saw they were holding hands. I noticed, I said. I just had faith in my wife and best friend, even if that faith was clearly misplaced. It never crossed my mind that two of the three people who meant the most to me would stab me in the back. You've already done enough to me. If you try to fight me on custody, the gloves come off. Got it? Then I guess the gloves are off, Claire replied. I'm sorry you think it has to be this way. It could have been handled a lot easier. Whatever. I'm sorry for making your complete betrayal harder than you want it to be, you witch. You two need to get the hell out of here. I'm not leaving the house I worked my arse off to pay for just because you think I'm not good enough anymore. I'm sure Mr. Moneybags can put you up in his bachelor pad. Fine, Claire said. I've already got a lot of stuff at his place anyway. That stung. I'll just grab a few more things and then we'll go. For what it's worth, Andy, I'm sorry. They were already out of earshot when I muttered. Nothing you say means anything, obviously. I sat silently on the couch while they packed in the bedroom for about 30 minutes. Tom left with a suitcase, and Claire followed, pausing briefly before leaving without saying a word. When April got home, I explained what happened, avoiding any harsh words about her mother or Uncle Tom. I believed in my bond with April, and was confident she would choose to stay with me. At 14, she had a significant say in custody decisions, and I trusted her love for me. I hired a lawyer, determined to fight hard, though he warned the laws weren't in my favor. Alimony seemed likely until Claire married Tom, and child support depended on where April chose to live. I felt sure I wouldn't have to pay. At the hearing 3 weeks later, Claire waived alimony, since Tom earned more and they planned to marry. I avoided looking at her during the proceedings. The judge spent an hour with April, who emerged in tears. I thought she felt guilty about choosing me. The judge granted the divorce, finalizing it in 120 days. Claire waived alimony and claims to our savings, which I kept. However, custody was awarded to Claire, allowing April to stay in the same school and environment. I was stunned. April had chosen Claire over me. I had misjudged everything, believing my family truly cared about me. It felt like a repeat of my past, being used and discarded. Now, they had a better option in Tom. The judge's words about equity, child support, and visitation blurred into background noise. I couldn't focus on anything but the betrayal I felt from the only three people that mattered to me. My attorney tried to reassure me, but it was just noise. I drifted into the hallway in a daze, vaguely aware of April hugging me and whispering, "Daddy." But I couldn't respond. The betrayal from Claire, Tom, and even April felt complete. I had no one left. Claire approached with a look of pity, promising I'd still see April, insisting this was for the best. Tom wisely stayed away. "I guess you won and I lost," I said. "I'll be out of here by the end of the week." Thinking I meant leaving the house, she replied, "There's no rush, Andy. Take your time. We can stay in the condo as long as we need to. I really hope we can get through this and learn to get along. You still mean a lot to me." I turned to face her, my voice now laced with anger. "Don't give me your crap. If I meant anything to you, this wouldn't have happened. Like I said, I'll be gone by the end of the week. Take your daughter and leave me alone." "She's our daughter, Andy," Claire said. "She'll see you next weekend." I growled. "No, she made her choice. She chose you. Goodbye, Claire." I walked out without looking back.
Claire. Tom listed his condo after the hearing, expecting a quick sale. Most of his things were packed, ready to move into the house Andy and I shared once Andy left. Our goal was to keep April's life stable since Tom's condo was in a different school district. Tom and I hadn't planned for this. We fell in love despite trying to resist. Hurting Andy wasn't the plan, but our feelings were too strong. Our first intimate moment happened when Andy had an overnight job, confirming we were meant to be together. In the following weeks, we met twice more before telling Andy. My feelings for Tom deepened. During those 2 weeks, it was hard to turn down Andy's advances, but I was now loyal to Tom. We knew Andy would be hurt, but we hoped he'd recover. We didn't expect how it all unfolded. Andy only communicated through his lawyer. He was supposed to pick up April at 4 p.m., but by 4:30 there was no sign of him. His phone was disconnected, and I couldn't reach his lawyer. Worried, I took April to the house. When we arrived, the house looked abandoned. Andy's things were gone, but April's room remained untouched. On the counter, I found a cashier's check covering Andy's child support until April's graduation. A knock on the door startled me, and I hoped it was Andy, but it was Mrs. Perrine, our neighbor. She informed me that Andy hadn't been around for days. He had emptied the house onto the lawn and a Salvation Army truck had picked everything up, likely the day after our divorce hearing. When I asked if he had left any forwarding information, she asked April to step outside. Then, with a sense of dread building, I braced myself for bad news. Mrs. Perrine shared the message Andy had left for me. He said, if you asked where he was, to tell you he'd see you in hell. Tears streamed down my face as the reality hit me. Andy was truly gone. He had prepaid his child support, given away everything he couldn't take with him, disconnected his phone, and left without a word. I had thought he meant he was just leaving the house, not disappearing from our lives entirely. When he referred to April as your daughter, I assumed it was said in anger, not a final severing of ties. After Mrs. Perrine left, April came back inside and saw my tears. I had no choice but to tell her the truth. Andy had left. She reacted with anger, blaming me for driving him away by being unfaithful and breaking up our family. She collapsed into tears, and I pulled her into my arms, apologizing, though I knew there was no easy way to make things right. We sat on the floor, crying together for what felt like hours but was only about 10 minutes. Eventually, we drove back to Tom's condo in silence. April shut herself in her room, crying again. Tom asked what had happened, and I explained everything. Andy had donated everything, cut off his phone, left the child support check, and told our neighbor that he would see us in hell. I confessed my fear that Andy might do something drastic. Leaning into Tom, I struggled to comprehend the enormity of what had just happened. Tom said, I never would have believed he'd react like this. He's always been the one that could handle the crisis. When we were being stupid and shattering beer bottles outside that school one night and the cops showed up, we all scattered, but there was no way we'd all get away. He calmly put himself in harm's way to let the rest of us escape. We asked him why the next day, and he said there was no other way out of it. They needed to catch someone. Once they did, he figured they'd stop looking for anyone else. And he said he was the most logical choice since he was the one with the record. He gave himself up for us. It was perfectly logical to him. I knew he'd be hurt by this, but was sure he'd understand that it made sense and we'd somehow move on. There's nothing we can do now until he turns up.
Andy. Being an electrician meant I could find work anywhere, even while staying off the radar. I had canceled all my credit cards, paid cash for everything, and moved 3 states away before they realized the house was empty. I found a local contractor who paid me in cash, offering a lower rate than I deserved, but I didn't mind since I didn't need much money and just wanted to keep busy. The contractor asked if I was on the run. I explained I wasn't, just avoiding being found. He seemed to understand, mentioning his own ex-wife, which made me smile. I slept in my car using a nearby truck stop to shower and shave. Although I could afford a room, I avoided anything that required my name. They probably weren't searching for me, especially since they had the child support, but I wasn't taking chances. With colder weather approaching, I found a room for rent. The owner, an elderly woman named Miss Ruth, was willing to do things informally. She didn't need the money, but wanted company and help fixing up her mobile home. In exchange for staying off the record and working on repairs, I'd stay there a few nights a week. It seemed like a fair deal, so I agreed.
Claire. The divorce was finalized in mid-January, and April's 15th birthday followed about a week later. She held on to the hope that her father would reach out, but the day passed without any contact. That night, I was devastated to hear her crying into her pillow. I went into the bedroom I now shared with Tom, a space that used to belong to Andy and me. Tom was reading, as usual. I couldn't believe that Andy had completely cut off contact with April, seemingly giving up on her just because she chose to live with us. Tom admitted he was surprised too, and suggested that we had underestimated how much the situation had hurt him. However, he reminded me that we couldn't let this overshadow our lives together. We needed to move forward, and possibly help April process her feelings through counseling. I agreed, realizing that with Andy gone, we would need to support her in coming to terms with his absence.
Andy, I had been living with Miss Ruth for nearly 3 years, sticking to a routine of going to work and coming home. Most nights I stayed in with her, having no interest in going out or meeting women. It was January, and I had quietly marked my 40th birthday 2 months earlier. Despite trying to forget my past, thoughts of it would creep in. My ex-wife was about to turn 40 as well, and her 3-year anniversary with Tom, whom she married 2 months after our divorce, was coming up. I had seen their wedding announcement online and gotten drunk that day. I also knew my former daughter was turning 18 this month and would graduate high school in June. Brief thoughts about her college plans surfaced, but I quickly pushed them away. All I wanted was a drink to block out memories of those who had betrayed me.
Claire. April had been driving since she was 16, so when she turned 18 and saw the new car we had given her in the driveway, we felt good about letting her take some friends to the mall for the day. We had come to terms with the fact that we no longer expected anything from her father on her birthday, but we still held on to a glimmer of hope. Yet once again the day went by without anything showing up. April. Graduation day. As I sat among the 347 students in my high school class, I shed a few quiet tears for what my life could have been. My parents should still be married, sitting together to watch me walk across the stage, something we had talked about for years. It felt selfish, but I couldn't help how I felt. Mom seemed happy now, having moved on with Tom, and they clearly loved each other, probably more than she ever loved Dad. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that none of this should have happened. I scanned the crowd and spotted Mom and Tom, who waved when our eyes met. Not far from them, I saw Danielle's parents, who had supported me through the divorce and afterward. They had always tried to help me understand the pain Dad likely felt, even though they didn't approve of his choices. I appreciated their presence, even if they were really there for Danielle. As I looked around at other familiar faces, one suddenly stood out. Near the back, a man with long hair and glasses caught my eye. I stood up to get a better look, but just like that, he was gone. Maybe it had only been my imagination. Claire. The next 4 years passed quickly, and without any major events. Despite our attempts, including visits to fertility specialists, Tom and I couldn't conceive a child. I would have loved to give Tom a child, but it wasn't meant to be. Still, we were happy together, even though we regretted some of the fallout from our choices. April was preparing to graduate from UC Berkeley, aiming for a teaching career. She had started dating a young man named Benjamin, and they seemed to be a great match. As often happened during significant moments in April's life, my thoughts drifted to Andy. It had been 7 years since we'd heard anything from him. We had once contacted his attorney, but were told there were no messages from Andy, and even if the lawyer knew where he was, he couldn't tell us. I found some comfort in knowing we hadn't been informed of his death, assuming he was still alive somewhere. I often wondered what his life had become, and if he had managed to move past the hurt I caused him.
Andy. Still living off the grid, I rented a room at a boarding house, paying cash without a lease, thanks to Miss Ruth's reference. At 44, I stayed in good shape. Miss Ruth had fallen ill, her family moved her to a care facility, and her mobile home was sold. I kept working for the same company, still paid in cash, with occasional raises. I wasn't exactly happy, but I had found peace. That changed when I walked into Denny's for lunch. I hadn't been there in a few weeks. Gail, a woman in her early 60s, had become someone I confided in. When I arrived, she directed me to a booth instead of the counter. It became clear why when my server appeared. Someone new, mid-30s, tall, slim, blonde, and beautiful. Her name tag read Sheila. We exchanged glances throughout my meal, and there was a clear connection between us. When her shift ended, Sheila wished me a good day, something she hadn't done with other customers. Taking it as a sign, I asked her to dinner. She smiled and agreed. After she left, I asked Gail for details. Sheila, 35, had an 8-year-old daughter named Megan. Her husband had left her for her best friend, and she'd moved here for a fresh start. Gail had set things in motion, thinking we'd be a great match. I arrived at Denny's early with flowers, nervous but excited. Sheila appeared promptly at 6 o'clock, looking stunning in a white floral dress and pink heels. We complimented each other, and the connection was undeniable. Walking to Maggie's Steakhouse arm in arm felt natural. Seated at a cozy booth, Sheila shared that she had just started at Denny's and appreciated the schedule. which allowed her to be there for her 8-year-old daughter, Megan. When she asked if I had kids, I said no, distancing myself from April. Sheila explained that any man in her life would need to be ready to eventually take on a father role for Megan. I reassured her I liked kids, though thoughts of April briefly surfaced. I admitted to being divorced, keeping the details minimal. After dinner, Sheila asked to be dropped back at the restaurant. She wasn't ready for Megan to see her with someone new until she was certain about our relationship. I respected her decision and reassured her we could take things at her pace. Sheila couldn't go out the next night, but she invited me for breakfast, which I gladly accepted. 2 nights later, I took her to a country western bar where we danced. She turned down offers from others, focusing solely on me, which was a refreshing change from my past with Claire. Our connection deepened, leading to a passionate kiss, and we headed back to my place. Back at the boarding house, we became intimate, sharing a meaningful night together. Afterward, I insisted on driving her home for safety. We shared a lingering kiss before parting. For dinner, I brought a green teddy bear for Megan, who eagerly accepted it. She showed me her stuffed animal collection, and Sheila and I shared a quick kiss. Megan's lively energy filled the evening, reminding me of April at her age, stirring up some old emotions that I quickly suppressed. After dinner, Sheila and I sat on the couch, holding hands and talking, while watching Megan play with her stuffed animals, including her new friend Bobby, the green teddy bear. It was a simple yet heartwarming evening. Rather abruptly, Megan stopped and looked at me. "Are you going to be my new daddy?" I gently explained to Megan that while her mom and I were still getting to know each other, marriage was far off. I reassured her that we'd spend lots of time together as a family, but there would also be moments when it was just me and Sheila. Megan seemed satisfied and focused on her ice cream. As we ate, old painful memories resurfaced, and I fought back tears, which Sheila noticed but didn't address. Later, I read Megan a bedtime story, feeling honored by the request. On the couch, Sheila praised how I handled Megan's questions. She invited me to stay the night with the understanding that I'd leave before Megan woke up. I agreed, and we spent a deeply intimate night together. Despite my lingering fears, being with Sheila felt like a second chance at love. Afterward, she checked on Megan, who was fast asleep with her new teddy bear. I dressed quietly and left, grateful for how things were unfolding and hopeful for the future.
Sheila. I was relaxing in Andy's bed while Megan was at a sleepover, and I had the day off. Andy had gone to work after we spent the night together, making love most of the night and again in the morning. We've been together for 8 months now, and I'm completely in love. I'm pretty sure he feels the same, and I expect him to propose any day now. After rolling out of bed and showering, I started to look around Andy's room. We usually stayed at my place because of Megan, so I wasn't here often, and this was one of the few times I'd been here alone. His room was simple: small desk, filing cabinet, microwave, hot plate, and a queen-size bed. As I glanced around, I noticed a file box tucked into the corner of his closet. It piqued my curiosity, especially since it was from the period of his life before he moved to Texas, which he never talked about. Torn between respecting his privacy and wanting to know more about the man I planned to marry, I decided to take a quick look. Inside, I found his marriage certificate and divorce decree, which didn't surprise me, but then I saw he had a daughter named April, now around 22, which would have made her just 14 when they divorced. I was stunned, as Andy had told me he didn't have any kids. The rest of the paperwork seemed normal, but this revelation about his daughter left me with more questions. There was even a phone number for his ex-wife, Claire. I carefully put everything back, unsure what to do next. Maybe Gail, who had known Andy for years, could give me some answers. I decided I'd start by talking to her. The next morning, I got to work early to talk to Gail. I asked her what she knew about Andy's past before he moved here, hoping for some insight. Gail reacted with concern, warning me to leave it alone and trust that Andy was a good man who would take care of me. Despite her advice, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed answers, especially after discovering that Andy had a daughter he had never mentioned. Throughout the day, I kept thinking about it. When Andy came in for breakfast, I did my best to act normal, but my mind was racing. After my shift ended, I returned to my apartment to think things through. The more I considered it, the more I realized that I needed to understand why Andy had left his daughter behind, especially since I had a daughter of my own, Megan. She adored Andy, and he treated her like his own. But if he could abandon one child, could he do it again? I couldn't risk Megan's heart without knowing the full story. As her mother, her well-being came first, even before my own happiness. Since neither Gail nor Andy would give me any answers, I knew I had only one option left to find out the truth. Claire. The phone showed a private number, and though I had grown accustomed to receiving junk calls, I still answered in the slim hope it might be Andy. When the voice on the other end asked for Claire Gilmore, my old married name, I nearly hung up, assuming it was another sales call. But the uncertainty in the voice made me pause. The caller introduced herself as Sheila and told me she was dating my ex-husband, Andy. Shocked, I stood frozen, unable to process the unexpected news. For years, I had thought about what I would say if someone ever contacted me about him. But now that it was happening, I couldn't find the right words. After a brief moment to collect myself, I continued the conversation. Sheila confirmed that she was dating Andy and understood my surprise, acknowledging that I hadn't heard from him in 8 years. She said Andy was doing well but wouldn't tell me where he was, sensing he wouldn't want her to share that information. She confessed to doing some snooping, as Andy had never opened up to her about his past. It stung a bit to hear that he had made a new life, even finding a girlfriend, yet he still wouldn't acknowledge our past together. Of course, I understand. I'm glad to hear he's doing well. He's a good man, Sheila. He didn't deserve what I did to him. If you don't mind me asking, Claire, what exactly did you do to him? I'm not really surprised he didn't tell you. To put it briefly, we were together for over 20 years and married for 16, and I divorced him to marry his best friend, who he had known since 3rd grade. Wow, it sounds terrible when I say it like that. Wow. My husband did the same thing to me. He divorced me for my best friend. Small world, isn't it? We hadn't been together as long, though, but that doesn't explain why he left the way he did. People get divorced all the time, even for reasons like yours. But they don't just up and leave their kids. There's got to be more to it. There is. I went on to explain what led to Andy's departure. I don't think he viewed it as abandoning his daughter because in his eyes, she had already left him first by choosing to live with me and Tom. Actually, right after the divorce hearing, he referred to her as your daughter and mentioned he'd be gone in a week, but I didn't grasp what he meant at the time. I can't say I agree with his actions, but I can understand them a bit better now, said Sheila. I didn't want to stir things up, but I felt this might be my only chance to discuss it. Sheila, I know you don't owe me anything, and this isn't for me, I said. April is getting married soon. She's tried to move on and cope with the fact that her father hasn't reached out since she was 14, not even a birthday card. Now, with her wedding approaching, she's constantly upset that her dad won't be there to walk her down the aisle, a moment she's imagined since she was a little girl. If you have any influence over him, if you can do anything. Sheila remained calm, didn't freak out, or hang up. She thoughtfully considered my request and responded sensibly, despite being the one currently in his life and the one who had something to lose. I understand what you're asking, Claire. If I bring this up, he might leave me and just disappear again. He can get a job anywhere and he's not short on money. I wouldn't even know how to start this conversation, much less convince him to come. Of course, I get it. Maybe it's better to let things be. Sheila, thank you so much for this call. Please keep my number. I would really appreciate it if you could update me occasionally on how he's doing. It would be comforting to know that he's moved on with his life. I'll keep your number, Sheila replied. But I can't promise more than that. I hope you understand. I immediately phoned Tom at work to share what had happened. Did you manage to get her contact details or anything we can use? No, her number was blocked and she didn't share her last name. But maybe this is just a small step towards something bigger. Sheila. I ended the call feeling both relieved and uncertain. I had learned what I needed, but now I had to decide what to do with it. Claire was right. I didn't owe them anything. Why should I risk my relationship with Andy for them? But it wasn't about them. It was about me and Megan. If I were in Claire and April's place, I'd want someone to help, at least for my daughter's sake. I couldn't shake the fear that Andy might abandon Megan, just like he had left April. I needed to know if his past actions were circumstantial or part of his nature. I made a tough decision, knowing it could risk everything. Andy needed to confront his past and face April. If I were to trust him with Megan's heart, he had to address what he had done, not keep it buried. The next day, I called Claire again. She was surprised but agreed to help. I asked for April's number and her promise to keep Andy's location a secret. She understood and gave me the number after preparing April for my call. After waiting, I nervously dialed April's number, ready to speak to Andy's daughter for the first time, knowing it wouldn't be an easy conversation. "Good afternoon. This is April Gilmore. Is this Sheila?" "Yes, it is," I replied. "Your mother must have explained what's going on." "She did, and she made it clear that anything you tell me about my father should be kept from her. I'm sorry it has to be like this, but I understand. I'm ready to do whatever you need. You'll need to fly into Austin International Airport as soon as you can. I'll pick you up and take you to your dad. You can stay with me while you're here, and we'll just see what unfolds." "Can I ask you something?" April inquired. "Why are you risking your relationship for me? You don't even know me." "That's a valid question, April," Sheila said. "I was in your shoes once, and my daughter is in your position now, just a girl wanting her father in her life. Some things are too important to ignore. I need to know the man I plan to marry, and I want him to make things right with you." While we spoke, April went online and booked a flight to Austin for the next day. She emailed me the itinerary, and I'd pick her up myself. Now, all that was left to do was wait.
Andy. When I got home from work, exhausted, I was pleasantly surprised to find Sheila waiting for me, completely without clothes. I pulled her into my arms and kissed her deeply, forgetting everything else in that moment. We spent an incredible night together, including a new level of intimacy when she gave me her a-hole for the first time. I briefly wondered what prompted the occasion, but decided not to question it. My love for Sheila was overwhelming, stronger than anything I'd felt before, even with Claire. It made me understand in some way why Claire made her decision, though it didn't lessen the pain or betrayal. As I dropped Sheila back at her apartment, I had the engagement ring in my pocket, almost ready to propose. But I wanted the moment to be perfect, so I held off. When she closed the door, her expression seemed slightly bittersweet, and I hoped everything was all right.
Sheila. After dropping Megan off at school, I drove to the airport to meet April. At baggage claim, I held a sign with her name and scanned the crowd. Despite the many people, I recognized her immediately when she smiled and walked toward me. We exchanged pleasantries, and she mentioned how eager she was to see her father after 8 years. We drove back to Marble Falls, the small town where Andy and I lived. Before reaching town, I pulled over and called Rosie, Andy's dispatcher, to find out where he was working. She told me he was at the Beals on 4th and Main and joked about a past encounter in the back of Andy's truck, which made me blush. April caught on, teasing me lightly. As we neared the department store, I spotted Andy's truck. I instructed April to wait a few feet back while I positioned myself near the driver's door. After about 20 minutes, we heard Andy's voice, signaling that the moment they had both waited for was about to happen.
Andy. After fixing the electrical issue in the restroom, I headed out to finish the last 2 calls before returning to Sheila and Megan. I had been carrying the ring with me, waiting for the right moment to propose, though I knew I might have to create that opportunity soon. As I walked toward my truck, I saw Sheila's car parked behind it and spotted her standing near the door. I reached for the ring box in my pocket, thinking this might be the moment, but then I noticed someone else, April. Seeing her instantly brought back a flood of emotions, the pain of betrayal, fear of what her sudden appearance might mean, and anger toward Sheila for orchestrating this meeting. I greeted April with a flat tone, acknowledging her presence, then turned to Sheila, realizing she must have found out about my past, and facilitated this. Trying to avoid the emotions rising inside me, I quickly mentioned that I still had work to do, put my tools in the truck, and prepared to move on with my day. "Daddy, I'm getting married." "Is that right?" I answered. "Congratulations." I paused, unable to squelch the anger that was burning inside me. "Try not to become a cheating hoe like your mother." With that, I climbed into the truck and shut the door. It didn't end there, as April was now at my window, banging on it with both fists. "I saw you. I know you still love me and care about me because I saw you. She was yelling to be heard through the glass, which I then rolled down. "What are you talking about, April? My high school graduation. You were in the back and you were trying not to be noticed. But it was you. That's how I know you still love me. I don't know what it is you think you saw, April, but it sure as hell wasn't me." I fired up the truck and pulled away. Damn it. I knew I should have gotten rid of that stuff, but I was trying to be cautious and hold on to a few things just in case. Now, my old life has come back to haunt me and tear me apart. Clearly, once wasn't enough. I drove for about 10 minutes before pulling over to gather my thoughts. How could Sheila do this to me? I was happy, damn it. After all these years, I finally found love and was content. I should have realized it wouldn't last. Happiness clearly wasn't meant for me, and I won't make that mistake again. I've yet to have anyone enter my life without eventually betraying me. Why would this time be any different? Finally, I pulled back onto the road, heading to my next job. I'd finish my calls today, then call my boss to let him know my past had finally caught up with me, and I'd be moving on. He'd understand.
Sheila. April was crying on my shoulder. I was completely stunned by how cold Andy had been. This was his own child, for God's sake. What she did wasn't that terrible. Kids make choices like this all the time, so this was clearly more about him and the pain he was feeling. Andy had always been nothing but loving to Megan and me. This behavior seemed so out of character for him. I helped April into the car and drove to my apartment. "You'll stay with me for now. This was just the first attempt. I'll talk to him again when he gets off work." I was trying to reassure her, even though I wasn't entirely sure myself.
Andy. When I returned to the boarding house after 6:30 p.m., I expected to find Sheila and April waiting for me, but they weren't there. It was a relief in a way, making my decision to leave easier. I loved Sheila and Megan deeply, but after what she had done, bringing April back into my life, I felt betrayed. Now that my past had resurfaced, I couldn't trust Sheila anymore. I began packing, knowing I would leave behind everything I had at Sheila's. Ignoring the knock on the door, I continued. But when the door opened, I knew it had to be Sheila. She leaned against the wall, watching silently before confronting me about leaving again. She admitted to speaking with Claire, finding out everything from the past. She said the same thing happened to her, but he left it alone and lived his life. I lashed out, pointing out how our situations weren't the same. Her betrayal wasn't like mine, not after 20 years of marriage, and a daughter choosing to side with those who destroyed me. Frustrated, I let years of buried pain surface, recalling how my mother cheated on my father and then abandoned me. My father took his life, and I was left to endure abuse from my stepfather. The scars on my back were a constant reminder of a childhood filled with neglect and violence. As I walked around the room, I kept thinking, why did Sheila have to dig this up? I was finally happy again. I had her and Megan, and I had worked so hard to leave the past behind. Those people were nothing to me anymore, just shadows of a life I didn't want. I'd been looking forward to the future, and now Sheila had opened up this can of worms again. Why couldn't she just let things be? She had nothing to do with them, and neither did Megan. Weren't we happy? Sheila tried to explain that she had found out about April and felt she needed to understand why I left her behind. I could see it now. She was afraid that if I could walk away from my own daughter, then I could walk out on Megan too. It was obvious in the way she looked at me, and it hit me hard. I felt betrayed again, this time by the one person I thought I could count on now. The realization pissed me off even more. I told Sheila that if she didn't trust me, I would save her the trouble of worrying about it. I'd be gone by morning. I was done with ruining lives. I told her to join the club of people who'd hurt me, and that once I was gone, she could cozy up to my daughter and the rest of the backstabbers. Maybe they'd come up with some new ways to get to me. But I wouldn't be around for them to mess with anymore. I thought I'd made my point, but all I really did was piss her off. And as I stood there, staring at her, I realized I might have just pushed away the one good thing I had left.
Sheila. I had reached my limit with Andy's self-pity and bitterness. I loved him deeply, but I couldn't stand by while he destroyed everything we had. He acted like the world was out to get him, but the reality was different. His daughter had dropped everything to come see him because she loved him and wanted him in her life. She wanted him to walk her down the aisle and meet his future grandchildren. Even his ex-wife, who he believed hated him, was simply trying to help their daughter find closure. If Andy wanted to stay trapped in his anger and bitterness, that was his choice. but I wasn't going to stay with someone who couldn't move forward. I admitted that yes, I worried he might walk out on me and Megan, especially after finding out he had done it before, but I was ready to understand, and I could have, if only he had trusted me enough to talk about it. Relationships are built on trust, and I had shared everything about myself with him, even the things I wasn't proud of. I did it because I believed in us, and I wanted him to take care of me, not out of need, but out of love. I threw his key at him in frustration, hitting him square in the chest. He didn't even flinch, which only fueled my anger. I told him he could leave, go back to just existing like he had for 7 years, instead of living like he had with me and Megan for the past 8 months. If that's what he wanted, fine. But I wanted something more, and I had hoped to find it with him. Without looking back, I stormed out, slamming the door behind me, making the whole building shake. As much as I wanted him to chase after me, to beg me to stay, I meant every word. I couldn't live with someone who refused to let go of the past and embrace the love we had right in front of us.
Andy. As Sheila slammed the door behind her, it hit me that I had been wrong. In trying to protect myself from the pain of betrayal, I had pushed away those I loved. I didn't want to lose Sheila and Megan, and there was also the chance of reconnecting with April, but I knew I had a lot to fix. I stopped packing and rushed to Sheila's place. Seeing her car there, I knew I had to make things right. Kneeling at her door, ready to apologize, she opened it before I could knock. I admitted my mistakes, told her I needed her, and begged for forgiveness, promising to do whatever it took. Sheila forgave me, but on one condition: I had to make things right with April. I agreed, relieved for a second chance. Inside, April sat on the couch, clearly having cried. I knelt in front of her, holding her hands, emotions flooding me. I apologized for letting my anger and hurt cloud my judgment. I explained how I believed her choice to live with her mother was a betrayal, leading me to leave. Thanks to Sheila, I finally saw how wrong I was and asked for her forgiveness. April forgave me, saying she was never angry, just sad. She wished I had talked to her before leaving, but she understood the pain her mother's actions had caused. We hugged, trying to make up for the lost years. Noticing Sheila crying, April invited her into the hug, and we shared an emotional moment together. After asking where Megan was, Sheila brought her in, and I reminded her of my promise about becoming her new dad. She remembered, and I told her to watch closely. Back in the living room, I lifted Sheila to her feet, thanked her for reuniting me with April, and proposed. She said yes, and we shared a kiss, with April and Megan watching. April corrected me when I called them stepsisters, insisting they'd just be sisters. We celebrated with dinner and planned a courthouse wedding. That same night, I started moving into Sheila's apartment. At the wedding, I felt sharp in my tux, but Sheila looked stunning in her pink dress, her pregnancy just starting to show. April looked like a princess, and Benjamin was thrilled to see her walking down the aisle with me. I had managed to avoid Claire and Tom, only glimpsing them briefly during preparations and the rehearsal. Claire had gained a lot of weight, now well over 200 pounds. She once said life with Tom made her fat and happy. Whether she was truly happy, I didn't know. But the weight gain was obvious, and part of me wondered if guilt had played a role. As Sheila and I stood chatting with some of Benjamin's relatives, I didn't notice Claire and Tom approaching from behind. Claire's voice, which once felt heavenly, now grated on my ears. Any fond feelings I had for her had long since faded, though, for April's sake, I tried to remain civil. I saw Tom begin to say something, but I held up my hand to stop him. "Tom, do you remember the last thing I said to you? Nod if you remember." He nodded. My feelings have not changed. Sheila, sensing the tension, joined him as they walked away, leaving me and Claire alone for the first time in years. Once Sheila and Tom had left, Claire and I stood in silence. I could have gone the rest of my life without speaking to her again, but that clearly wasn't an option. She broke the silence, expressing surprise that after all this time, the animosity still lingered. She hoped we could move past it, maybe even be friends, given that we had all seemingly found happiness in our new lives. She acknowledged Sheila and our happiness together, including my role as a father to Megan, something she had learned about recently. I made it clear that her hopes for reconciliation were misplaced. The intense love I once had for her had turned into a deep hatred for both her and Tom. When she asked why I couldn't let it go, I explained, starting with the painful truth of my past. My mother had repeatedly cheated on my father before leaving him for another man. My father, devastated, took his own life, something I had hidden out of embarrassment. This background, however, wasn't the core issue. The real pain came from the betrayal of the three people I loved most: Claire, April, and Tom. I had built my life around them, believing we would grow old together, but their actions shattered those dreams. Claire admitted that she had loved me, but not in the way I had loved her, something she couldn't control. But for me, the betrayal wasn't just about the loss of a romantic connection. It was about the destruction of trust and the sense of betrayal that two of the people I relied on the most had conspired together to rip apart everything I thought I knew. "Andy, we didn't mean for it to happen," she said. "You didn't stop it either. You just went after what you wanted, ignoring the consequences. Do you even understand how hard it was for me to think about trusting another woman after what you did? Losing you and Tom wasn't enough. You took April too. April made that choice on her own? Bullshit. Look me in the eye and tell me you didn't influence her to stay with you. I know what you said. It'll be strange with Tom here instead of Daddy, but at least I'll still be here after school and you can see your dad whenever possible." Tell me that didn't happen. Claire couldn't deny it, and I knew she wouldn't. You wanted it all, didn't you? Your selfishness destroyed someone who loved and supported you for 16 years? Did you ever think how that would affect me? Did you ever suggest to April that maybe she should live with me so I wouldn't be left completely alone? You're right, Andy. I didn't think of it like that, but you disappeared without saying a word. What did you expect me to do? My whole family was gone. I was left alone while my wife and daughter lived with the man who replaced me. Did you think I could stay there and watch my life move on without me, only to see my daughter a few days a month? I had two choices: cut all ties or end my life. And honestly, I was close to choosing the latter. When I told Mrs. Perrine I'd see you in hell, I meant it. I even had the gun. Claire, shocked, said, "God, Andy, I had no idea." Of course you didn't. You were too busy with your new life to care. You replaced me, convinced April to stay with you, and never once checked on me. After the hearing, I told you I'd be gone in a week. I didn't mean just out of the house, I meant dead. You didn't even ask what I meant. I didn't end myself because I hated you and Tom too much to give you the satisfaction. Andy, I cut her off, saying, "I let my anger cloud my judgment with April. When she chose to live with you, I assumed she had picked your side and wanted Tom as her father, and I overreacted by leaving without a word. That cost me 8 years I can never get back. Thankfully, Sheila pulled me out of that spiral, or who knows how much more I would have lost. Now I know what it's like to have someone who actually cares about me. Do you understand why I still hate you?" "I get it, Andy," she admitted. "I hoped time would heal things, but it hasn't. I'm sorry for how we handled it. Can we at least be civil? Yes, we share a daughter. I'll treat you like any stranger. But make sure Tom never speaks to me again, or you'll be a widow." Over the next 2 years, I gradually bought out my boss as he retired, becoming the largest electrical contractor in Marble Falls and one of the biggest in Central Texas. While I still went on calls occasionally, I mostly ran the business from the office with my wife Sheila and 10-year-old daughter Megan on staff. Sheila managed appointments, I handled staff and projects, and we did the paperwork together. Megan adored her new baby sister, Katie. A year after our wedding, Benjamin got a promotion to Dallas, about 4 hours away, but we still see them monthly. They're expecting my first grandchild next year. Nothing terrible happened to Tom and Claire, aside from their significant weight gain. While I don't care to hear about them, April keeps Sheila updated, and Sheila occasionally shares. Sheila doesn't hold a grudge like I do. She even sends them a thank you card on our anniversary, saying their actions brought us together.